Hello, business writing folks. So, we're going to get into the heart of a lot of this, which means email, right? And email is a huge part of business correspondence these days. Um, if you work in a business setting, if you have worked in a business setting, if you know somebody that works in a business setting, email is a constant. I know in the academic setting, I might get up to 100 emails a day, and that's pretty common. And one of the things when we're receiving that many emails is how we interact with them, right? And think about if you receive a really long email, what your tendency is versus a very short email. So in the email module, and in these couple videos, we're going to talk about the importance of email, conventions, subject lines, intros and closings, and general formatting. So this first video will be kind of a broad overview, and we can go into more detail as we move on. So a little bit of background first. As already mentioned, a lot of us receive quite a few emails. And so according to Finance's online reviews for business, 121 is the number of business emails a person receives per day. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't read 120 emails. A lot of the emails I get are, lists, something from a listserv, or sometimes in the professional world, emails that don't necessarily pertain to me, and I just filter through them quickly. Obviously, if it's an email from a student, that's something that's going to take more priority for me. It's going to get my attention. And again, that goes to audience and tone, some of the other things we've talked about, which is who we're getting an email from might bump that up in priority. If you get an email from your boss, hopefully that bumps up in priority versus, hey, here's a sale at your favorite store, although probably not. So emails sent per day, so this is from the same source. There are in 2025 an anticipated 376 billion emails sent per day. Now, of course, probably a good number of those are marketing emails. Now, what I think is interesting, and again, this goes to things that we should be thinking about and things we can talk about as the course progresses, which is the email open rates by device. Only about 20%, not even 20% of emails are read on a desktop computer. 42%, so the vast majority, are read on smartphones and tablets. Now, why is that important? Well, think about how much is displayed on your phone or your tablet. It's probably more, but a phone, there's not a whole lot that you can sort of read. The text gets really small and so on and so forth. Top email elements that undergo testing. So what people really think about when they're sending an email. Number one thing here seems to be subject line. And that is a big one. We'll talk about it a little bit in this video, a little bit more in other videos. And then other things, calls to action, right? What are we asking our audience to do when that email is sent? And then the email layout. Quick note here about send time and day. It can be very important. I do have colleagues that will email me and students who will email me at 3 a.m. on a Saturday. What's the downside of that? Because it's in your mind, it's fresh, that's when you're sending it. Well, I'm not going to respond to it right away. So you're waiting is part of it. And also, if you send that email, let's say you send an email to your professor at 3 a.m. on a Saturday, and let's say they don't check their email until Sunday evening before they're going back to school the next day. Your email is now bumped way down. So all those other things are above it. So it is sometimes helpful to think about what time of day, what day you're sending things. Some instructors and professionals even have things set up on their email that say, hey, this email is sent outside my normal working hours. So just food for thought. And so, of course, we have a love-hate relationship with email. Number of reasons for that. I think the dislike, the hate part is probably because we get so many of them. The love part is it's easy, it's fast. But I think that it kind of raises the question of what is the goal of an email, or what is the goal of email in general, right? What are we trying to do when we send an email, at least in a professional capacity? So more often than not, we want to make sure we're sharing information so that it's important, right? It's relevant to our reader. Again, we talked a lot about audience. Is it important to them? Because even if it's not from an important sender, right? If it's important or relevant information, I'm going to read it before I read other emails. Usually, more often than not, part of that goal of specific emails to get some sort of response. I need information. I need confirmation, right? So an example of all of these would be if I get an email from the school nurse at my daughter's school, I'm going to read that first, and I'm going to respond pretty quickly, and I'm going to expect a response back until that sort of chain of thought or chain of reasoning is resolved. But we also want to make sure our emails are read. As you know, because much like me, I'm sure you delete a lot of emails that you don't even really read. So what guarantees something gets read? Because if you're going to put the time and energy into it, you want to make sure that email gets read, and you want to make sure it gets read thoroughly, right? All the way through. So common types of emails, if we kind of break it down a little bit more, would be a request for information or help, right? So maybe I'm requesting information from another department at my business. Hey, I need tech support to come and fix something. I need PR to put together a promotional flyer or whatnot. I might be sharing a status report or an update. So I might be telling my boss, hey, I'm behind schedule on this. Here's the situation. Here's how we're kind of dealing with it. Or, and I've had this too, where, somebody that is, the dean or of the department or something might email and say, hey, what's going on with this project you're working on? Where are we at? Is it going forward? Do you need any help? Third one, and these are in no real particular order, an invitation to a meeting or event, right? I need you to show up at orientation. I need you to come to this meeting on this important topic so we can discuss a marketing campaign or whatnot. And then the fourth one I'd say is a follow-up or a thank you email. And it's a whole other art form that we will also talk about later, which is when, why, and how to send a follow-up or a thank you email. It might be that somebody came to a meeting and you want to thank them for showing up. It might be that somebody told you they were going to do a certain task and you want to follow up and say, hey, is that completed? And all of these, much like thinking about the context, the audience and the context of a message, help us figure out how to construct our emails. So before we send an email, right, we should be thinking about if an email is necessary, right? There's obviously the joke about, a meeting could have been an email. Sometimes it's easier to pick up a phone. Sometimes it's easier to walk down the hall. Sometimes it's a topic that is too much for a single email. And so an email may not be necessary or appropriate. It's also important to think about who needs to be included on an email, especially in a professional setting. I may not be just emailing to one person, right? In my capacity, I might be emailing to the dean, but I might also be emailing to another instructor. I might be emailing to multiple students at the same time. And then, of course, as we talked about with audience, who are we sending that email to? What do we know about them? Have we met them before? All of those things which change the formality or informality of a given piece of writing. Now, if we go back to that idea of when to send an email, here I'm not necessarily talking about the time of day, right? What I'm talking about is immediacy of action, something that is timely, that's responding to something that is happening now or needs to happen very soon, or maybe it's a save the date. We're going to have a meeting in 2 weeks, put this on your calendar. It's also important when the recipients, the people receiving the email, are important to the topic. Right. Sometimes in business, they talk about these as stakeholders, the people who have an investment, not necessarily financially, but they are connected to a particular thing. And then the third one, and again, another thing we can talk about more is that something is one concise topic. Sometimes it's important, much like breaking up paragraphs in an essay, to say there's a lot here that I need to convey, and I'm going to actually send a separate email about this other topic. Maybe I'm sending an invite to a meeting, but I also need to talk to somebody, the same person, about a marketing campaign that's unconnected to the meeting. It's going to be better for me to send two separate emails, which helps focus that conversation, rather than sending one long email where a person might only respond to the first half and not necessarily the second half. Again, some basics. Hopefully this is relatively common sense. When not to send an email, when you're angry or frustrated, same as saying something you wish you hadn't said. When you're distracted, I know there's times that I pause in writing an email because my children are asking me questions, there's a lot of noise or whatnot. I would suggest avoiding sending emails on emails or weekends or late at night unless you need to. Again, see earlier in this particular presentation. And I would suggest you not send an email if your purpose is uncertain. That is to say, if you're not entirely sure what your purpose is for that email, hold off on it. If you don't know exactly what you're asking or what you're trying to share, wait until you have that figured out. Because all it's going to do, if your purpose is uncertain to you, it's going to be uncertain to the recipient, and it's going to create more work in the long run than it would take just to sit down or pause or take a break and think about what am I actually trying to accomplish with this email. Okay, so we'll go ahead and pause there, and in a separate video, I will address kind of the different parts of an email, which again probably seems like, well, we all know that, but there are some things I think are helpful to sort of hone in on, think about, just to make your life a little bit easier. All right, so questions, comments, concerns, jokes, memes, recipes, email me and let me know. Otherwise, I'll talk to you all in the future.